introduction.
This is Fred. Fred works in IT and doesn't have a tail.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to this edition of The Big Debate. I'm your host, Iguma Gabriel, and today we come to you from a different location. When I introduce our guest, you'll understand why we're not using our CTV location for today's show, but a special edition of the show. You will recall that in the news, you saw that the People's Front for Transition did announce that it was going to carry out a number of activities in order to demonstrate against a couple of things happening in the country. One of the things on that list is the escalating prices of commodities. The hope was that they would draw government's attention and therefore action to some of these issues. The day they planned to actually start their activities, including demonstrations, walking to the city, Kizza Besigye, the chairperson of that group, was arrested momentarily and detained in his home. Those who had come to join him, like the Lord Mayor Erias Lukwago, was also held for a short while at Kizza Besigye's home. A number of security forces were put around the home to make sure that he does not leave. Unfortunately, these are scenes that we have seen a little too many times. But today, we woke up to news that those forces had been withdrawn. What does this mean for the activities of the People's Front and those that believe the way they do? What does that mean for the issues they have been pushing for? Well, we discuss that on The Big Debate today. Thank you for joining us for the show, and you can contribute to the show using our hashtag CTV Big Debate. Like our tradition is, we will introduce our guest via video.
Our guest tonight, Warren Kizza Besigye, also known as retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, is a Ugandan physician, politician and former military officer in the Uganda People's Defense Force. Dr. Besigye, a seasoned politician, served as the president of the Forum for Democratic Change Party and was a presidential candidate in Uganda's general elections in 2001, 2006, 2011 and 2016. He has for long been known as one of the leading opposition figures in Uganda's politics, coming out several times to challenge the policies of the ruling National Resistance Movement. The four-time presidential candidate is currently chairman of the political pressure group People's Front for Transition, which is advocating for change. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest.
There you are, our guest, the retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. Good evening and welcome to your maiden appearance on The Big Debate.
Thank you very much again, and you are welcome also to our village in Kasangati.
All right. When people think of Kasangati, especially your home, many times the images that come to mind are, some kind of war zone, because many times people see your home, it's because something is happening here, especially between you and the people in uniform. Well, I should tell our viewers that at night, this place is quite, silent and peaceful. But also, is this what it has been like these past couple of days, the 6 days when you are confined to this place?
Yeah, well, this is a wonderful village, wonderful neighbors, and it's a generally very peaceful environment if we are not invaded by the people who disturb our peace and take away our freedom and our rights. And when you do, this village can be tough in resisting. And in fact, you say that the images that come show some kind of a war zone. Its nickname is Benghazi. And it was nicknamed Benghazi because of what was taking place in Libya, where there was the Benghazi rebellion that led to the situation that still is ongoing in Libya. So yes, It's a good village, and I am proud to be in this village and to have the village mates that I have.
But are the village mates happy to have you? Because of your political activity especially, the village gets those interruptions you're speaking about.
Well, I think the interruptions that I speak about are frankly everywhere. It's not just my village. Every part of the country has its share of violence that is occasioned by those who are supposed to protect them. You will realize that, in fact, in times when people are supposed to express themselves during elections, the whole country is like a war zone. The deployments all over the country, all over Kampala, the encampments of troops in every literary open space is indicative of a country at war. And so what my village mates experience cannot be just because Besigye lives here. In fact, they are, I believe, very happy to be part of our organized resistance to this kind of abuse by the state on its citizens. You can imagine that the most recent events since Thursday, the way I was very roughly intercepted, carried literally, I was hardly stepping on the ground and thrown into my compound, and a tough siege laid on the home. Up to today, nobody in police or anywhere amongst those who are supposed to be responsible for security, for whatever it is they were doing, nobody has talked to me up to now.
Do they usually talk to you?
1 week, I'm telling you the kind of acts of impunity and abuse that the regime that we are challenging get involved in. Now, if they can do this to me, they can do it to you. They can do it to anybody. And indeed, they have done it to many, many other people. I am among those who are lucky that I'm still here talking. There are many who are dead. There are many who are in various prisons who have never faced justice, have been incarcerated for years in prisons, have not been in any court. So, if we have such a situation in our country, it cannot be any village feeling sorry for itself. It must be every citizen of this country feel the injustice and reacting to it. In fact, rights don't have borders. It should not be limited to those who are being abused at the time. It should not be limited to the borders of the country. Human rights are universal. Abuse of anybody's right should be abuse of all people's rights.
All right. Abuse of anyone's rights. And yet there are limitations. If the enjoyment of your right is going to lead, to the abuse of somebody else's rights, then, you are not justified in doing whatever it is you want to do. And that is a line that has been used many times to stop you.
Well, that is obviously a line that I'm sure you being a journalist, you should be able to dismiss without even referring it to me. Because if you have any reasonable cause to believe that somebody is acting outside the law provides for what you do. There is no law that provides that you do the kind of things that they have done to me, to my home, and to all those who are in our vicinity. No law at all. Indeed, again, from where you stand in the media, you should know that courts have actually condemned what they do here. We have moved courts to make rulings about what they do, and they have been condemned and ordered not to do what they are doing. So they do what they do with impunity, knowing that they are breaking the law. They are not, and that's why, you know, even this time around, when they moved away, nothing had changed. Because what had changed that now caused them to move away? I am still saying what I was saying, and indeed I will continue doing it. So, anybody who follows what is going on in Uganda and who follows what goes on in repressive regimes would understand that the purpose of what they are doing is not to protect anybody at all. What they are doing is to protect the abusers in power, to survive in power, because they consider that what we may do may endanger their hold onto power. And that's why this is a political situation. It's not a security situation. It's not a crime situation. This is a political situation where you have a regime that is illegitimate. That's why they give people elections. That's why all observers of elections that have happened under Mr. Museveni have said that these elections don't qualify to be called free or fair.
The 2021 observers say that the election was a free and fair election.
Which observers?
The ones that came, the African Union team.
No observer. You see, the African Union is the one which is most despicable, and I don't think it qualifies really to be called an observer. Election observation has standards. And the African team, the African Union team, I believe not surprisingly, because most of the African governments are not democratic. So you have a union of tyrants. And therefore observing elections, I believe, would indeed end up the way it does. Because election observation starts way back before elections. If you want to observe elections, you have to follow the whole process. And the African team comes latest, they leave earliest in the electoral cycle. In fact, they only observe aspects of balloting, casting the votes, only aspects of balloting. You cannot talk about that as being an election observation team. But over and beyond that, as you know, in the elections that I was involved in, 2 of the elections that I was involved in, we petitioned the court. And all the judges unanimously, not divided, said this is not free or fair.
And they came to the conclusion that notwithstanding, it would not change the outcome.
Forget about what other they came about. That is unequivocal. This election is not or fair. Nobody can dispute that. It's an unequivocal declaration. Now, once you declare an election free or fair, then without doubt, it violates the Constitution. Only one election is allowed by the Constitution, free and fair election. That's the only election that is allowed by the Constitution. But yes, we have a judiciary, and you see, what we are dealing with is state capture. A country which was captured by force of arms. No leader has ever been removed by the people of Uganda in the entire independent period of Uganda, 60 years. No leader has ever been removed by people. All leaders have been removed by guns. No leader has been brought by people. All leaders have come through guns, including the current one.
And you participated in that process?
Yes, absolutely. Does not make it any different. So this means that if you have a population which has never removed a leader, which has never brought a leader, that population has no power of choosing its leaders. That's exactly what it means. So now, that means that you have a captive population, a population captured by guns. And that's why guns are the ones that mediate everything, whether it's election, whether it's if I want to move, guns will be surrounding everywhere. So, in such a situation, you can understand why what is happening today is happening. It is to protect the illegitimacy, because if people assert their will, they will remove the illegitimate regime. So what we are involved with is a scared, illegitimate regime doing all it can, and that's what it has done all these years. By the way, we have taken this regime to the International Criminal Court because it's a criminal organization, frankly.
And if the International Criminal Court does not agree with you, won't you come to the same conclusion? Because, it seems like the only legitimate answer is when the courts come to your same conclusion.
You see, happily, I know that you are a Ugandan. If you, as a Ugandan, agree with me that no leader has ever been removed by yourself in your entire life, or in the entire life of your father and his grandfather, nobody has ever removed the leader of this country. If you agree with me that no leader who became a leader of this country was that you participated in their bringing, at least I did, by force. You have never participated in bringing a leader. I believe the current one, by the time he took office in 1986, you possibly were in primary school if you were born. Is this you, the person fielding these questions? Is it what you call a government that you would enjoy to have in your country? Because you are asking me as if it is about me, talking about criminality. No, it's about the people of Uganda. That's why crimes are not, if you are taken to court over a crime, even if I slap you, they don't say, Iguma versus Besigye. No, it is Uganda versus Besigye.
Yes, for criminal offenses.
Yes, because a crime offends everybody. So the crimes that have been committed here, at all times, including mass crimes like the people who were gunned down in Kasese, hundreds, other hundreds are still rotting in prisons. The tradition of Kasese, of the Barunyarwenzururu, is in prison. Nobody has ever been tried. 6 years, that was in 2016. 6 years later, nobody has been tried. What is that if it's not a criminal regime? That is criminality. That's what we are talking about. And people gunned down and armed, gunned down, like the people
Besigye,
who, like the people who were killed,
sure
like the people who were killed in 2020 here in Kampala, and they just talk about it casually. Yes, it seems we killed 50 people, and the others who were killed were rioting, but the 50, those may be,
all those incidents you talk about, they're official positions, and there are processes where bodies, CSOs, and other concerned citizens do go through the judicial processes in order to come to official positions. Those haven't come to the conclusions that the government is in error.
So if they haven't come to the conclusion, does that absolve the acts? Were people killed or they weren't? Should they have been killed? These are the questions. You see, if the people of this country don't take the governance of their country seriously, and this is precisely why even now we are trying to do what we are doing, to get people to take their governance seriously, the suffering that the people are going through is going to become much, much worse. Of course, we are living in a country now literally of slaves. With these ones you see being shipped, taken to Arab countries, they are just slaves. Some to donate their parts, some, these kinds of situations are not situations Ugandans should treat casually.
Dr. Besigye, you are a man of great resolve. From about 2001 or even before, you've stood against, these issues that you are talking about. And you say these are the issues of Ugandans. How come the Ugandans have not, in mass, come behind you on these issues?
How do you want them to come behind more than they have? Because why are they being killed? You see, unless you say they arm themselves and fight back. Because whenever they come, they are gunned down. Even
one of the tools at their disposal is elections, and we have general elections every 5 years. Like you said, you've participated in these elections 4 times.
Yeah, but that's what we just talked about a short while back. Can you call them elections? Absolutely not. They don't pass the mark of being an election.
Okay. From where
you cannot have an election in which there is no freedom, and I don't think even any casual observer can see what goes on in any part of an election and say that this is, you saw what happened here in Kayunga, the very latest election that I think we have had
LC5
recently.
For LC5 chairperson.
Yes. Would you call that an election yourself? Because you see, unless, and this is why I have been very, very hard on people who at least are exposed, who have gone to school, who know how elections elsewhere are carried out, who know what rights of people are, who know what the rule of law means, so it is incumbent upon such people whom society have given an opportunity to have more information, more exposure, and therefore more confidence to assert their will. In our situation, my great disappointment is that the elites have abdicated in a large measure, not all of them of course, but in a large measure, they seem to have abdicated their leadership responsibility to be the articulate, that guide others to live better times. And that's why we have got where we are, you know, the crisis in which we are. Of course, some people believe that there is a crisis.
When you say crisis, what are you referring to in this particular case?
Which particular
You say
case?
the crisis that it is why we are in the crisis we are in.
No, as a country, the crisis in the country of the population, the largest part of the population, the crisis which we have characterized as a crisis of failure to thrive, that most citizens simply can't thrive, can't live and dispense their normal, you know, human activities with ease. You know, you must have seen a government report last week that 14 million Ugandans are mentally sick. You think that is normal? This is a government report. Sick because of stress, because of depression, because of, you know, the same environment that we are talking about, where people don't know what they will eat. They have children at home. The schools have opened. They don't know how their children go back to school. They don't know how the sick people in the homes will get medical care. They don't know how basics, you know, needed in the home. You hear the cry, so everybody crying soap. They can't wash.
At the moment, government says that that situation is temporary, brought on by a number of external forces, including, you know, the war going on between Ukraine and Russia right now, but also the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, not just on Uganda, but on the world, and on the fact that we import a number of these essentials that also, you know, the raw materials used for making some of the essentials that you refer to, like soap.
Do you agree with them?
Do you agree with them? I think that is the more important question.
You see, that is absolute nonsense. Because, in fact, when we launched the campaign to push back against this crisis, it was in October last year. There was no war in Ukraine at all. But even before last year, even if one wanted to talk about before the COVID pandemic, which was 2019-2020, the crisis was there. You see, the crisis was very much there, that people cannot afford the basics. People cannot access healthcare. People cannot access education, you know, and employment. You know, that there are hundreds and hundreds of young people who are hopeless, you know, don't have any form of income, don't have any hope of any form of income, and are just wondering. I've told you that that is what the same people that have created the crisis have exploited to now export all these desperate people into slavery, to spare parts, to go and supply spare parts of their bodies to those who have money.
You're referring to externalization of labor, especially to the Middle East.
And to the thriving trade of human parts, you know, happening here. So if you don't call that a crisis, this has nothing to do with Ukraine, has nothing to do with the COVID, it's been building. And the reason that crisis is there, we have been explaining it, and that's why, as I have pointed out, I am rather taken aback that, you know, people who understand it don't explain it to all Ugandans so that we jointly find a means of pushing it back.
All right.
And you people in the media, you have the frontline responsibility, really, of interrogating what is going on, even making feature films and documentaries to articulate what is going on, so that people understand the situation of their country and start together to crystallize ways of how to redress this situation.
All right. You have come up with your way of redressing this situation, or at least raising awareness on the situation. Just very clearly, if I could take you about 6 days, back, that I believe it was the 12th of this month, you did hold a press conference here just before you attempted to leave your premises. What were the issues that you were going to, let's say, walk against?
So in the current instance, there were two issues involved. The first one is the major one, the main one, addressing the captivity of citizens, which is the source of the crisis. That's where the crisis comes from. Because unless you address the source, you may deal with the symptoms, but the problem will remain. Now, that captivity of citizens by armed people is the source of the crisis. It did not start even with Mr. Museveni, because when, as you said, I and Mr. Museveni and other colleagues fought their way into Kampala, we thought we were going to address that there was a captivity of citizens by gunmen. At that time, we thought we could use guns of liberators to liberate the power of the people and transfer it back to the people. What has happened since is that transfer, that transition of taking power from gunmen to the population never happened. And I have endeavored to explain how it was sabotaged through the constitution making process and through other processes of sabotaging.
Are those the processes that actually are used to transfer power to the people? Coming up with a constitution?
Yes, and I'm telling you that is where the sabotage took place. Because rather than transferring power indeed to the population, the constitution simply constitutionalized the transition process, NRM, which was a transitional process. NRM was not a political party. It was an amalgamation of all Ugandans to work together for transition, so that we create independent institutions, we create freedom and a rule of law, and then there is free competition. That did not happen. Instead, the constitution created a one-party state. NRM became
the movement.
They created a movement state. So the transition never happened.
But we did move from the movement, the one-party
No,
state.
we didn't. That's again, the fallacy.
Dr. Kizza Besigye, you left and even started a party, Forum for Democratic Change.
Yes, but the movement state remained. And if you were old enough, you would remember that Mr. Museveni and his colleagues were saying the movement will keep on marching on its way. Those who don't agree with it can get out, but the movement is continuing. To Bejeko, let's get rid of those who are causing us discomfort. The movement continues. And that's why they don't even call it a party, they call it an organization, as if it's the all-inclusive organization of the transition. So the transition was sabotaged. And that's why we are still where we are, gunmen ruling. So that is the first thing that Ugandans must reverse. And we go through a transition to end gun rule to popular rule.
Does it matter that we have a president who is not a member in the army?
It's not just being in the army, it's who has power. Is it the population? It's not about the president, or is the population the one with power, or those with guns? That is the question.
Article 1 of the Constitution, power belongs to the people. Our Constitution says the power is in the hands of the people.
So do you have
and they
it?
exercise it.
So do you have power?
Well, going by the Constitution, I did cast my vote in this last election. Choosing.
That is, you're asking what the instant situation involves. Yes. The first thing is to continue to awaken the population about the failure to have transition. Say, by the way, you are still living under armed rule. That is the fact of the matter. Now, when there is armed rule, it means all institutions of state are captive. And if you care to see what is going on, you know, you were earlier on talking about what happened in Parliament, where there is a coffee bill. A coffee report.
Yes.
Now, that report of Parliament, which was supposed to be made to Parliament, before it could be made to Parliament, Mr. Museveni summoned the committee to take the report to him. And they did. They took the report to him. And he ordered them what he wanted them to do with the report. And so, when you have...
But the report that was, you know, tabled before Parliament today and discussed in Parliament was the same report that, you know, had leaked earlier on. Nothing in that report changed.
Yes, what changed is what will happen to it. That is what changed. So the report as original, which, and I must really commend elements in that committee who stood their ground in spite of the orders of Mr. Museveni, because he wanted them to alter the report. They stood their ground and refused, and that's why they eventually the report has made it to Parliament. But what he wanted them to change, which is to maintain the MOU, the agreement, I have no doubt that it will be maintained by the Parliament. Doesn't matter, you know, at what stage it will be maintained, because that's what the order is.
So, for you...
You have seen Parliament, the same Parliament, and especially you who is in the media, you have seen Parliament make its own resolutions. The very following day, they are loaded in buses and taken to meet Mr. Museveni. And they come back, the same Parliament, and reverse all the resolutions they have made. Have you seen this, or you haven't? Because you should not just be the one shooting the questions. You have a responsibility as a media person, as a citizen, to reflect on what is going on. So
yes.
What I'm trying
so you're referring to what happens on the floor of Parliament.
So what I'm trying to point out
yes.
is that when you have gun rule, you have captive state institutions. All state institutions are captive.
Right. Let's talk about...
Have you seen the military attack the chamber of Parliament?
Dr. Besigye.
Have you seen the military attack the chamber of Parliament? Has anybody who attacked Parliament ever been tried in any court, or even been sanctioned? Those who attacked Parliament in broad daylight on cameras. And have you seen later the Speaker of Parliament wrote to Mr. Museveni, who are these people who attacked us? Has anybody who attacked Parliament ever been censured in any way? No. So Parliament is simply a rubber stamp. Have you seen the soldiers attack the courts of law, what the former principal judge Ogola, Justice James Ogola said, a rape of the temple of justice. Were you here when the rape of the temple of justice was happening?
The infamous Black Mamba.
If the justice has been raped, the parliament has been attacked, which institutions of state are you talking about that are there? Let me crystallize. Wait a moment. Let me crystallize what we are doing. So we have a captive state, all institutions captured. Now, after capturing the institutions, and by the way, the institutions include the military which captured the state itself. The military was also captured by Mr. Museveni's family. Museveni happened to be its commander. So we have a all captive institutions in the military. Those in the military, in fact, are twice captives. They are captured. So once the institutions are captured, the next thing that is captured are the resources of the country. So those who capture the country capture the resources. All this is a process of capturing the resources. About coffee now is part of the process of capture of state wealth.
Dr. Besigye, if we could talk a bit about those institutions. Earlier in the show you did mention, that the courts of law in relation to, election petitions have been unequivocal. Those are institutions that you are now saying have been captured.
Absolutely.
Yesterday you were visited by the Uganda Human Rights Commission. They did say that they were going to raise issues of you being free. Today they were the first to announce that the deployment around your home had been now.
Have they? They are not the media to announce today, that the soldiers have gone away. The question is, was what was going on a violation of rights? Have you heard the Human Rights Commission make a mention of what their own view is on it? Whether this was condemnable or not?
Today on the floor of Parliament, and I'm sure you heard this, the Speaker of Parliament did condemn what was happening. And actually
I've already told you that the Speaker of Parliament is absolutely captive. Whether she condemns, whatever she does, the law. If people are violating the Constitution itself, on the basis of which Uganda is formed and run, what is the word of Anita, the Honorable Anita among MP of Bukedea? What if the Constitution, if the Constitution of the country is raped, institution of justice is raped, the Parliament she presides over is raped in broad daylight on camera. So why would anybody listen to what somebody passing as a speaker says? So, but don't distract me. So I told you that the state, the country is captured by gunmen. In capturing the country, they captured the institutions of the state. In capturing the institutions, they now had access to capture the wealth of the, and all our wealth has been taken, including the assets we had worked for together and together, public assets. They were all shared and taken. What was Commercial Bank is now Stanbic Bank. Go and find out its owners. What was Uganda Hotels is now People's Hotels. Go and find out who owns what was Uganda Hotels.
What those processes that we were advised about by the World Bank, by the IMF?
I don't care who advised what. What actually happened? How much money came out of all those assets that you, the owner, benefited from? Because you are part of the owners. What did you benefit from those assets that were taken? So those assets were the starting point They were taken. Now, having been taken, they came to the resources that were from which those assets were coming. And that's what has been happening, taking the land, public, the land that belonged to prisons, the land that belonged to education, the land that belonged to Uganda Railways, the land that belonged to, I don't know, all city council, what, and all over ranches of government.
I know you have dismissed the role of Parliament, and yet today, in relation to the administration of land by the Uganda Land Board, Parliament has a report talking about Nakawa land and condemning the way certain things were handled. People were interviewed on the record,
so will land go back? This is the question. I told you is nothing. Doesn't matter what Parliament says. It's absolute it's nonsense. What Parliament says is, how many resolutions of Parliament have been ignored? You go and check. You are a journalist. Unanimous resolution of Parliament. Don't do this, and they go ahead and do it.
But there are also many that have been followed.
So it's, in other words, the decision of what to follow or don't follow does not belong to Parliament or anybody. It belongs to the owner of power. Is the one to choose who says, oh, this one, well, maybe this one is okay. It's not Parliament, which should be the embodiment of the people of Uganda. All the power that you said belongs to the people is supposed to be exercised through their representatives. So in fact, Parliament should be the supreme organ of state, because that's where all the power of the people should be. Is it?
It's checks and balances according to the Constitution. Three arms of government.
So is it? So do you, if you were asked, would you pass that Parliament as that supreme, a Parliament in which soldiers come and beat up everybody and just go away? They say, what can you do? Is that, which arms are you talking about? If one arm is beating up all the other arms, do you still consider them as your arms? So that is, so we want Ugandans, the first purpose of what we are doing is to get Ugandans to understand the state of capture of their institutions, of their wealth.
Okay.
Today, Uganda's export #1 is gold.
Yes.
Which is earning 4 times as the second export earner, coffee.
Which is coffee.
Who owns the gold? Have you tried to find out? So that one was taken. Now the coffee. And it's not this MOU that is taking the coffee. The coffee was already taken. You see? Because I was here when we had Coffee Marketing Board, I know what happened from Coffee Marketing Board, which had the monopoly, to the ones who control coffee now. Have you tried to find out who controls coffee, even without this MOU? So that is where the problem, that is where this crisis we are talking about of failure to thrive of citizens comes from.
Okay.
That all their wealth has been taken. That all their means of creating wealth has all been taken. And, they impose taxes as they wish. But how much of what they pay in taxes goes back to help them? So you pay taxes, but you also pay for your health. Because if you are sick, you are on your own.
Dr. Besigye,
you pay taxes, but education, you have to pay. And if you don't pay, it's your kid to suffer. You pay taxes, but in agriculture, which is where 80% of Ugandans derive their livelihood up to now, you find that the budget provides 3% or at most 4% for agriculture. So this is where this crisis is coming from.
Dr.
The
Besigye.
crisis is about the country that is serving a few people and where everybody is sacked and milked until now people are just dying or being shipped into slavery. That's what the country must wake up to. The first wake-up call is about regaining our country. And that is, nothing major will happen unless we regain our country. Now, we will not regain our country through an election organized, controlled by the captors.
So how will the country be regained from the situation that you described? Because from what we see,
three things.
what you're doing, you've done before.
Yes, steps. And it's not about Besigye doing it. It's about even you doing it. Because I'm not the only one in captivity. You in the media, you are even in greater captivity than I am. Have you seen the media people being tortured and killed? Have you? So this is not a Besigye mission, that it's Besigye who should do. What are you doing? No, it's not me. It's what are Ugandans doing about this crisis. And they need to do three things, which is what I am trying to get them to do. One, it is to get those who don't know the captivity in which they are to know. Everybody must get engaged in the wake-up call. Wake up, we are dying. Gwanga muje. We must sound the drums of Gwanga muje. Tufa tugwao. Banange, wake up. So this is what I'm doing. Gwanga muje. Wake up. The next thing that must be done is for those who wake up to organize. They must form networks that communicate with each other. In other words, rather than suffering and dying as an individual, we must coordinate our voices and have a stronger voice through networking. And we must then, number three, take actions that fight off the capture, break out of the capture. We shall not break out of the capture unless we take actions that convince those who have captured us that they can no longer continue to do so, like we did with the British. And get out of the capture of the British by just wishing them away. No. People organized, people woke up others for independence, organized and took actions that persuaded the British that this is no longer possible to continue holding these people as our subjects. And they said, okay, now we shall give you independence. And then we can talk about how that happens. That's exactly what is needed. So there, in a country, there are two liberations, really. One from the foreign domination, which is the first stage. That one we somehow got out of it. The second one is domestic domination. And that's what we are grappling with. It took 70 years to end foreign domination. 70. We are now 60 years under domestic domination. Hopefully, we won't take as long as the foreign. And that's why, you know, some people who are easily defeated say, but these people have guns. How can we? It's not possible for us without guns to defeat them. How did we defeat the British? We did. And the British were the makers of the guns. They had technology that was very sophisticated. These ones, these ones are just using second-hand guns. You know, these mambas you see running around were second-hand vehicles used by the South African white government, the apartheid government, to terrorize the blacks in South Africa. These mambas, that's why they were made, to terrorize the blacks. They are very old equipment, which they buy. You know, in Uganda now we depend on second-hand things, second-hand clothes, second-hand underwear, second-hand arms, second-hand. So how, if we can defeat the ones who made things, how can we fail to defeat the ones who survive on second-hand? We definitely can defeat them, and we shall defeat them. So, but it will take those 3 steps.
Have you taken
people to wake up?
Have you taken stock of what has been done in the past? How much it has achieved in relation to what you hope new efforts will achieve? And definitely,
yes,
these are not
course.
efforts by only you.
Of course.
They're efforts by you know, others who think like you.
Of course. I can say without the slightest fear of contradiction that Ugandans today are far more awake to this captivity that I am talking about than 20 or 30 years ago. They are far more awake to their situation, thanks to the effort that has been undertaken these times to get them to see. Secondly, the regime that we are fighting is now far more weakened than what it was that time. And sometimes people don't appreciate that. It is far, far more weakened, and I can elaborate how weaker they are, you know. So we, I think, have made significant steps. And what we need to do now is to intensify that.
Dr.
And
Besigye,
finish the job.
You've given timelines in the past, you know, before the next election, you know, Ugandans will have risen up and taken the power back. You have, you know, this time you're actually again saying,
you see,
26.
I don't know what you do apart from, you know, serving at the CTV. But in any human endeavor, you must set targets.
All right.
It doesn't mean that those targets will be met, but you must set targets.
Okay. Dr. Besigye, we have to go for a break at this point, but we will come back and you will pick up with that point. Stay on CTV, because after this break, we continue the discussion with retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye.
Hello, Kampala! The first ever Hair and Beauty Expo is here! Join us as we showcase and celebrate the work of beauty artisans working behind the scenes all over the country at the Hair and Beauty Affair. An event featuring a beauty expo, awards, workshops, runway showcases, entertainment, and so much more. Happening for 3 days starting Friday the 27th to Sunday the 29th this May 2022 from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day at Motive Industrial Area with free entry to the general public. For bookings and reservations, call or WhatsApp 0757 132 433. Powered by Motive, CTV, Movid Products, and Stanbic Bank. An Eminent Brands Production 2022.
Love sports? We do too. We got you covered. The Sports Dish, your daily lunchtime sports show that serves the intrigue, breaks down the act, and gives you an in-depth analysis of the odds. Who's going up? Who's going down? Catch all the thrilling action right here on the Sports Dish with Clive Chazé. Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Three words: convenience, passion, and pride. Introducing the KCCA app made for you to interact with the best football club in Uganda, giving you the latest news, transfers, membership options, merchandise online shop, match ticket bookings, and fan zone instant messaging. To download the beta app, go to Google Play Store on your Android and search for KCFC. Download the app, sign up, and voila, you're in. Yes, the app is only available for Android users. iOS users, we are coming soon. The KCCFC app, inspired by you, made for you.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for staying with us here on the big debate on CTV. I'm your host, Iguma Gabriel. Today we're doing a special edition away from our studios. We are in Kasangati at the residence of retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. We're getting his views on a number of issues that are happening in the country currently. Dr. Besigye has laid out, their strategy. The three things that they hope Ugandans can get up to do. It is wake up, organize, and then take action. Well, Dr. Besigye, definitely there are many other things happening in the country, and Ugandans are eager to hear your view on those issues. And if you could conclude with the point you were making earlier on, and then we can go into a number of issues.
Yes, Gabriel. You see, so the first issue that we are waking Ugandans up is on what change the country must have. It must be from gun rule to popular rule, power shifting through a transition, and that's why we call our front a front for transition.
All right, Dr. Besigye, will you allow,
and that is also why
Ugandans
just a moment
to decide what kind of transition they want.
Yes, and we have prepared and presented what we call a transition agenda, so that anybody can discuss the type of transition that we need. Part of the wake-up call is actually to give this information to people so that they respond to the transition agenda that we have suggested. But in concluding this point, you see, also as this is happening, there has been a curious occurrence where one of the soldiers, who is Mr. Museveni's son, has clearly come out to say that he is going to take over power over our country, and that he's unstoppable. These are his words. He's going to take over the power, and he's unstoppable. And
are you referring to comments made on his official Twitter handle?
Yes. And
that comments on that handle have been retracted certain times.
These ones have not been retracted, at least. Even those which are retracted are not denied. They are stated. You can, of course, take back, remove from your page anything you want to keep away, but unless you retract it, it is still your view. So one assumes that what they are trying to do is to have a succession from Mr. Museveni to his son. And I have been hearing them try to suggest that it is a shift in generations, from the older generation to the younger generation. That's not what our country is about. Our country is not about succession, it's about transition from gun rule to popular rule, not from the father to the son, or even to any other person, as long as it remains gun rule. So what they are trying to do is not to change the governance struggle that we are engaged in for the last 130 years. The 70 under guns of the foreigners, the 60 under guns of commanded by the likes of the ones who are here. What we want is what should have been the fundamental change that never was, shifting from gun rule to people rule. That's the transition. So the first wake-up call is about transition, not succession. The second element of it is how people can be saved, even as that struggle is still going on. Because that struggle may take a bit of time, depending on how quickly a critical mass of people wake up, organize. If they all organized tomorrow, of course, in 1 week we could have a transition. But we are not in control of the speed at which people's minds change, at which people can organize. And that's why, although we set targets, we don't have full control of implementation or achievement of those targets. We do our best, and that's all that we can do. But even as that is going on, certain things can and should change to save lives. Because we are talking about cost of living that is way beyond the means of most citizens now, including public servants. They cannot simply live without stealing. And that's why I think criminality, indeed even in the public, is escalating. So what is it that can be done? Whatever can be done, and we have crystallized it, will need effective pressure. It must not be just a lamentation. We must create the pressure for those who are hoarding state resources to apply them to save those lives. Because, as I said, resources are captured. They are not available to us. They use them the way they want. But we can force them, even in the interim, to shift those resources to where people are. And these resources that need to shift are resources like the wasted money where our taxes go, that are not essential, that are not useful. This is part one, the huge government structure that is not only ineffective but unnecessary. We have a government of more than 80 ministers governing literally nothing, because we are still a highly indebted poor country. That's how Uganda is classified, a highly indebted poor country, HIPIC. We don't have 80 ministers running a highly indebted poor country. When America, the richest country on the globe, has 15 ministries.
The president has explained that. He says, you know,
well, I'm not here to, I'm not interested in what the president says, because that's why we want to throw him out. What he says is absolute rubbish. So the question is,
when you were a minister,
the question is,
yes,
the question is, do we as a country benefit from having more than 80 ministers? Is that how you would like your tax? Because this is your money. Is this how you would like your money to be used? That you have 80 ministers with huge vehicles, with the soldiers guarding them and getting allowances and all kinds of things and offices and travel abroad and travel internally, billions of shillings that are spent daily on this unnecessary expenditure. When those who are rich, much more rich than us, from whom we beg from the taxpayers in other countries, they don't have that kind of thing. So this can be drastically cut. It will not be cut unless we put the pressure for it to happen, to reduce cost of public administration.
All right, but
sure
you have seen
that we abolish resident district commissioners who are just campaigners of the criminal regime. You know,
I think you've actually had people, petitioning. Let our son also be a minister. Let so
what?
This is what the people have asked for.
Well, you see, they may be asking for that because of what the system presents. Because you see, what happens now is that the state has been more or less privatized. So, depending on what one steals from the state and takes to share out from the beggars in the villages, if one is in an advantaged position to steal and take for those distribute on funerals, on those who are begging for school fees and so on, that is because the people have even not appreciated that this money the ministers bring, the MPs bring, the other government functionaries bring, that it is their money. You can see even when they are brought, now they are talking about parish model, and that they are taking for them money directly to the parish and the people should clap. But where did all this money in the state come from? 100% of all the money, including the money that is being wasted on those ministers, on what, comes from the parish. There is no money in government that does not come from the parish. So they take away billions and trillions from the parish. Some is wasted on this wasteful expenditure, Some is stolen, or the corruption in government is stealing parish money. Some is maybe inefficiently applied to their services. The leftovers, then they say, let's take something to the parish directly, and people are clapping as if it's not their money, which leftovers of their money.
Starting point.
So the thing,
at least
you cannot have
money back to the parish.
No. You see, all that money is their money. This is the wake-up call we are making, is to say, by the way, all the money in the government is yours. Budget for it. Make your priorities. Don't let somebody else make your priorities. So if your priority is to take your children to school, let's sack all these ministers. They can go and grow cassava like is now RDCs. Let them go and increase the growing of cassava. Let the money they have been using take your children to school. So it is your choice, because it is all your money. You have no medicine. You have no medicine in the hospitals.
A government in place is there to manage how those resources are used to the benefit of the citizens.
Yes, you see, the government in place, if it was not a captor, an imposition, that's what it would do.
All right.
Then it would aggregate all the voices of the people and prioritize them.
All right, Dr. Besigye,
that's what is not there. That's what we must push for. So the second wake-up call is on the immediate changes that need to happen. Because if we reduce expenditure, wasteful expenditure, if we recover the stolen money, these billions every day, they say this one took 60 billion, the other one took so much billion, the other one took 200 billion, you know, all these money that have been stolen, money can be brought back to the...
It's undeniable that corruption is a problem in Uganda. In your view, what should be done about corruption?
That we can talk about that. We have very, very clear views about corruption. But let's first of all, in the immediate sense, let all those who have been, you know, found to be corrupt, let money be appropriated. Their houses sold, their hotels sold, and the money...
There's got to be a law to support that. Otherwise,
yes,
what you're saying, you know, rule of law...
Actually, the law,
actually,
the law is already there, except that there is no will to enforce it. And what we are talking about...
Alone asset recovery?
What we are talking about... Yes, the laws are there. What we are talking about is the will. You heard Mr. Museveni telling the IGG that no, don't go after people who store money. They will take it abroad. Leave them in their hotels.
Well,
leave them
for context.
You know,
the president was reacting to, you know, the new measure that the
yes, and was it an unreasonable measure of
lifestyle audit?
Is a lifestyle audit,
and he gave a caution, you know, on the application.
Yes, because he was saying, don't come for me. Because who has the, Mr. Museveni, the property he has is our money. I came with him from the bush, he had absolutely nothing. What he earns as a president, we all know. So what he has is our property. It's part of what should actually be brought back. So, but we are saying that all this money, part of it at least can, if there is will, it can come back and save the people that are dying. We've been talking about the money that is being wasted in Congo, that we are building roads in Congo, we are making water, clean water for Congolese, I don't know what, and soldiers all there that we are hunting ADF. I have never seen all these months, you know, which ADF they have found. You know, maybe we are yet to find out which ADF they have found. Well, all wasteful expenditure. Mr. Museveni took over government. He didn't.
As a person who served in the army, you will agree that if there is insurgency in neighboring countries, that puts us at risk.
Of course, the question is how you address it. That's all we are talking about. So the thing is, we can cut expenditure, we can retrieve money that has been lost, and this can afford us to reduce taxes on essential things which are hurting people, or even removing taxes on some, and balancing.
Are there governments that survive without taxing?
Absolutely. It's not taxing. It's not surviving without taxing anything. You choose what you tax.
You know that
you choose the rate at which you tax.
You know the first world countries that we, you know, refer to when we're talking about development, their levels of taxation are much higher than ours here.
Yes, they have what to tax. You are taxing a dead person. The two are different. And more people will die, and eventually the one taxing them will also die.
Okay.
Actually, the measures we are talking about, in the end, can save the regime to live a little longer. Because this crisis is simply not tenable.
All right. Dr. Besigye, you speak about the difference between a transition and succession.
Yes.
I'm sure you use this very deliberately because of, you know, what's going on in the country right now. If, you know, the son of the president, the commander of the land forces, is, yes, harbors ambitions of becoming president of the country, and says, when the time is right, I will retire from the army and then vie for the top position. Doesn't he have that right?
Is that what he's saying?
Well,
no, because you read what he says. Is that what he's saying? I'm asking you. You are a journalist.
I've not only read about it. I did host, you know, people who have been organized.
No. Don't forget about what you've hosted. What he has written. Is that what he has written? You as a journalist, is that what he has written, or you are just assuming if he said this? Because he has said certain specific things. He has posters on his messages, and has said,
He says those posters are made by the people who believe that
yes,
he'll
and
make a good president.
he has posted them. So, and he has said, not just post, but he has said they are going to take. Have you read these things, or you are part of those who are able and willing to say things you know are not true? Because have you read what he has said? Is what he has said in the terms you're asking me?
Yes, they are. So, you know,
Sure.
yes, yes.
That he has said that when the time is right, I will retire, and then I may seek to. Is that what he has said?
He has actually,
is that what he has said?
What he has actually said.
No. What you have said, is it what he said? What you have said now, is it what he said?
He has stated. Yes.
You see, if you are a journalist, you have a responsibility greater than mine of being truthful, of quoting making the right quotations and references. So tell me, what has he said? Has he said, or he hasn't, that they are unstoppable, they are going to take over power of Uganda? And he's saying it as the commander of land forces.
Yes, there's a tweet to that effect. So the question is
that acceptable in your view? Is it according to the law?
That's what I'd like to find out from you, because that's part of what you've taken issue with. When he says something,
is it
like
something that you must find out from me, or this is common sense that you cannot be commanding our forces and you are also a candidate? Does that make sense to you? Is that criminal?
That's a question that I've actually put across, and this is the answer I received. This is the answer that I received, right? Dr. Besigye, this is the answer that I received.
No.
That there cannot be candidates when the Electoral Commission has not declared that there is an election.
So, the commander of the land forces is at will to say he's going to take over our country. But
No.
there is...
I am not justifying. Being a journalist, I have put that question across. And the answer I have been given is, when the Electoral Commission has not declared that there is an election, there cannot be candidates.
So, let me put it to you. I served in that force, long before that gentleman. I was in that force when he was in primary school here in Kampala. I am an officer commissioned in that force. The force is governed by an act of parliament and also a constitution. The act of parliament stipulates very clearly, plus its regulations, which are also approved by parliament, how somebody joins the force, how somebody is promoted within the force, how somebody behaves while in the force by a code of conduct, which is part of the law, how somebody retires from the force. All these are public documents, which you, as a journalist, have a responsibility, especially when there are issues that are controversial like now, to read. And you should not just be putting to those people you put questions to without reference to what the law...
Those questions were put in
to what the law says. So in other words, what I'm saying is, it's not just saying I'm a journalist, I just, put a question and I get an answer. You can yourself say that is not what the law says, because this is a public document that governs the country. So I can tell you without the fear of the slightest contradiction that Muhoozi joined the UPDF in violation of the UPDF Act. Illegally. He has had promotions in that force illegally, not as provided for by the law. What he is doing right now is illegal,
Yes.
according to what
you've made this
the
statement.
Code of Conduct
Yes.
says.
If I could just ask on one of them, because you've made these statements a couple of times. You've been consistent
Yes,
in saying that.
absolutely.
Why do you say he joined the force illegally?
Because there is a procedure outlined by the law of how one becomes a commissioned officer of the UPDF, which is, as I have said, a public document. It's not something that is private to me. Get it, interrogate him about those processes and whether he went through them.
A call is put out. Those who qualify do apply. They go through the process.
Yes, I've told you that there is a process. You interrogate him whether he actually went through those processes.
In this case,
and I'm telling you that he
didn't.
didn't.
Saying that he joined illegally. At what part did he miss in order for him to be in the army illegally?
Those processes that make him a commissioned officer, they are specific, they are outlined, the processes. He didn't go through them. He was just recruited and taken for training and eventually commissioned without going through the processes. And I have stated it many times. I haven't heard anybody say you are wrong, because I know what I'm talking about. The promotions are also provided in the law and the regulations. So what I'm saying is, this is simply part and parcel of the state capture. I told you during the program that the army captured the power of Uganda and the family captured the power of the force. And that's why all that illegality and criminality goes on.
Dr. Besigye, because of time, we cannot go on with the issue of succession and, transition. But so, in your view, what is the way forward? Because you've been calling it illegality for a long time. You've been calling for attention to it, and yet it doesn't seem to be gaining traction.
Well, it is a problem that is out there. It is a problem confronting all Ugandans, including your good self. It is up to you. I discharge my own responsibility of shining a torch at the problem, of providing what I think, and my colleagues whom we have similar views, what we think should be done.
Okay.
I try to do what ought to be done, and the rest,
all right. Dr.
leave it up to
Besigye,
you.
you once said you were not willing to offer yourself for a certain election, but the people that support you insisted that you do, and you ended up running in an election. Part of what General Muhoozi says is there are people that want him to run as president. If there actually is a critical mass that wants him to run as president, isn't this something he should be left to attempt?
See, I don't know why you rotate around the same question. Every citizen has a right, all the rights provided for under the Constitution.
Okay.
And Mr. Muhoozi, I believe, is such a citizen. I have heard people say, he was born in Tanzania and so on and so forth. But for me, I think if you accept Mr. Museveni as a citizen, then his offsprings will be citizens. And to the same extent, they will have the rights. The whole question that is at stake, which we have spent all this time talking about, is that the country is under captivity by force of guns, that we cannot have free and fair elections in such a situation, and that we live in a country where 60 years on, no leader has ever handed over power peacefully to another, and that Mr. Museveni has destroyed the constitution that was made even under his own rule and using guns and using money and guns, destroyed the same constitution. So these are the fundamentals.
Okay.
So if I told you that even if it was not Muhoozi, anybody brought by the same system of capture, whoever it is unacceptable. That's why, so the starting point is to have the transition. But secondly, on the in respect of Mr. Muhoozi specifically, what he is doing is illegal. If you want to use the rights of citizens to vie for such political positions, it's fine, but you must again go through the law. Resign your commission and come and join politics, which he has not. So one day he's making all those statements, tomorrow he's commanding his troops to come and beat me, because that's what he's doing. We are beaten by soldiers commanded by him. So he's clearly, he has an opportunity to kill his opponents using state power, which is a very, very serious matter. You know, even in his own best interest, he shouldn't put himself in a situation where if anybody who is contesting for power dies now at the hands of a gun, he will be the prime suspect, because he has declared, yes, because he has declared his intention. So clearly, all those who have declared similar intentions are people who are jeopardizing his interest, and he has the power to liquidate them, which he has been even talking about. We are going to kill Karamajong, we are going to kill. So if you are in such
in reference to cattle rustlers.
If you are in such a situation, even if they are cattle rustlers, they are Ugandans, they are taxpayers. You know, this is what people forget. Even criminals are Ugandans and taxpayers and have rights.
Yeah.
You know,
and the law does state,
you can't just go and say,
the law does state,
yes, I'm going
in what condition,
I'm going to kill,
in what situation
I'm going to liquidate.
a person can be.
Absolutely.
Well, okay, well, Dr. Besigye, you did speak earlier on about, we talked a bit about, you know, the coffee agreement, the controversial coffee agreement. Parliament did discuss a report today. You say you don't have much hope in, you know, what Parliament can do. But as a way forward, as we come to an end, and I'd like to get your comment on a number of things. As a way forward, what would you want to see happening in relation to this coffee deal and the management of coffee? It being the second, you know, highest foreign exchange earner for the country.
Well, I have grown up in coffee. My father was, I think, one of the earliest coffee growers and traders. And even as a kid, I was involved in harvesting coffee, drying it, and selling it. And so very, very many Ugandan families, there have been cycles in which coffee has been abandoned, even uprooted. Why? Because of the policies of the captors of our state. Because as I've told you, our people live in captivity, have always lived in captivity of gunmen. That's why it's critical that to have any policies that are sustainable, that are satisfactory to people, people must be participatory and must have influence in that process. So you can realize, I think that there are two major, for me, there are many details that people have been debating over this agreement, but for me, two main problems stand out. The first one is the absence of involvement of the coffee owners, who are the growers and processors. That this whole agreement did not cater for their interest. They were not on the table, they were not consulted, they did not have their views and so on. That is the first.
And what is the second?
Which is why it should die. Secondly, is that if there is an opportunity to add value, which is what this whole process seems to be about, that this investor is going to add value to coffee.
Add value and then get better market, especially
what should
on
be done is to have an equitable process that involves all those who can take up that opportunity. If there is an opportunity for adding value, that opportunity should be clarified that Uganda has this opportunity, this is what it requires. Those who are interested in participating in this opportunity should present themselves and compete for this opportunity.
Okay.
So Ugandans as well as foreigners could compete for the opportunity, so that there is then an equitable process of getting the opportunity.
And with a parliamentary report that comes to the conclusion that the agreement is unconstitutional, illegal, void, and unenforceable, isn't there something in your view that can be, taken from this report and becomes actionable and therefore leads to a good agreement?
Well, I said earlier that first of all, really, the people who are involved in this fraud should be, at least for the first time, used as an example, that they should face the maximum kind of penalty that our law reserves for such betrayal of the country. Because I've been accused, charged with treason.
In your view, these are actions that
this is treason, because you are betraying millions of people and their livelihoods.
All right.
So first is to deal with that, but secondly is to really reflect on the bigger question of how this happens to be, because this is not the only thing. This happened only now. I don't know how it leaked to the public. But the scandals that are all over the place are unbelievable. The current ones as well as the ones that have passed, which people have forgotten, where Uganda lost, trillions of shillings. So, so the question is, can we trust our national resources to a system that is capable of doing this? Because there are even more strategic resources. We have oil, which is coming online. And I want the whole country, in fact, to use this to focus on oil. Because that oil, apart from the distinct possibility of losing out on what benefit it could bring us, because it will benefit a few, like all the other things have benefited a few. But apart from that, it can deepen the enslavement of Ugandans.
Okay.
Because whereas now, as I told you, we are fighting with a shambolic system that is using second-hand equipment and so on. If they have oil money, what will be terrorizing Ugandans are not these second-hand drones of vehicles. There will be actually drones in the air.
Why are you looking at that and also better services can be brought to the people?
No, but
the same resources.
Those services can never. What has stopped this? The better services coming out of the money that we have today. If the money we have today is helping only a few against the others, what will change?
Definitely, there is a long way to go, but we already have better roads, more hospitals, and a number of infrastructure here and there.
You see, the question that you should be asking is not whether there is a better road. British built roads here. Roads don't translate into your lives. Roads are facilities to transport things. And they can be facilities for exploitation, which is what the British built the railway for, to carry our copper from Chirembe, to carry whatever they are carrying to take away. So if somebody is building a road to your farm, you can't clap when he's coming to take away whatever little you have, which is what this coffee is about. Those roads are to sort away our coffee, our cotton, our tea, our whatever, leaving nothing with the people. So the thing is that the human beings, when I went to university, all my fees were paid by the state, including giving me money to transport me back home and so on. That was under leadership that Mr. Museveni came calling swine. Today, this is why I've been asking what his appropriate name now should be, the one who was calling the other one swine. And today, no student in the university, even the few, that are there still paid for by government. If you see the conditions in which they are not fit even to be called students. If you see now they have even abolished, I think, feeding of students at the university and so on and so forth. So the question is, and these are things that we need to interrogate as a whole country.
All right. Dr.
So
Besigye,
if we, in this situation of state capture, oil comes to the captors, and they have been liberally saying, this is my oil. What it will do to everybody in the country, they will live for a very long time to cry about. So it's a time, this is why transition is a must, if we are to survive. It's an existential threat to our communities.
All right, Dr. Besigye, a quick comment on the land question. It keeps coming and going. Your view on, because land is a key factor of
I frankly consider that I have already talked about it, because I told you the process of capture of the state, how it starts with the institutions and goes to the wealth. And so our land is Mr. Museveni's land, just like it was crown land. Before independence, all the land in Uganda was called crown land. It belonged to the Queen of England, who had all power in Uganda. Well, so even today...
But today government has to compensate a person before they can take over their land.
Well, those are some of the theories you hear about. In any case, even when they do, whatever little compensation they make is paid by us. The question is compensating for whose benefit? Is it leaving us and going to some private individuals, which is what the case is? All these people you hear, all the land. You remember we had schools at Shimon. Shimon Primary School, Shimon is teacher training college, Shimon demonstration, whatever. What happened to that? All that land in Naguru. All that
for
land.
Shimon, you know, there was supposed to come a hotel for
Yes,
Chogam.
yes,
for
yes.
Naguru,
yes,
they were supposed
yes,
to develop
yes.
cheap housing.
You will
for
go on
Ugandans.
and on saying they were supposed, and you know what happened. So land, whether we like it or not, once you don't have power, you don't have power over your wealth. And it will be taken away like it is being taken away. So this is why this struggle I am talking about is a struggle for survival. It's an existential struggle.
All right.
And it's up to Ugandans. All we can do is wake them up, give them the facts, tell them the way. Whether they take the way or not, that is now up to them.
All right, Dr. Besigye, we have to bring this to a close, but what are your next steps? On Thursday last week, you were stopped.
Well, we are continuing. We are continuing.
What exactly are you going to continue
with the wake-up call? What was stopped is what we are going to continue
And you
with.
believe they will let you?
Well, that's what we will test. And that's what every Ugandan should test. And it should not just be me waking up people. Even you, when you go to wherever you stay, you have a duty. You see what we are doing? We are doing it under Article 3 of the Constitution. You should read Article 3 if you haven't. When a country is under capture, like it is today,
every citizen should do
has a duty. It's not just a right, it's a duty. So every Ugandan has a duty. I am only discharging mine and hoping that all other Ugandans will discharge their duty and we free our country and it serves us as God intended it.
Are you concerned about the fact that when you do such things, like if you do manage to walk into the city, are you concerned about the fact that, yes, in order to stop you, a number of Ugandans will lose property, people will get injured, and in the past, the unfortunate
So if I am concerned, what should I do?
And that's what I'd like to ask you.
Because there are two options. One is to therefore keep quiet and remain a slave. The other is for me and the person you are talking about that his tomatoes will be spoiled, for her to keep or him to keep the tomatoes, and together we get our country back, we restructure it to benefit all of us. Because even that one selling the tomatoes, whom you don't want me to spoil the tomatoes, as soon as the tomatoes are sold, the money is taken by those who control the state. It doesn't benefit them. All those tomato sellers and shopkeepers, the people here in the shops in Kampala, many of them are now, I find them this way in the villages in Busika, where they can no longer stay there. And so, if we want to all of us survive, we have a duty. And yes, we shall go through inconveniences. We shall go through sacrifices in order to reach the area of luxury, of enjoyment. You must pass through the hardship to get there. And this is the law of life. You know, people who, if you know how you went to school, there were people who would sacrifice, wake up very early and read, and others who enjoyed the morning sleep. And each one has consequences. So the one who sacrifices will later on enjoy maybe a better life.
All right, you definitely...
And that's what we need to do as a country. And do it urgently, because we don't have all the time. As I have said, the clock is actually ticking, and it will become far, far more difficult to get out of this captivity if, for example, that oil gets into the hands of our captors when we have no power over it.
Dr. Besigye, we have to end here. Your parting shot.
Well, first of all, once again, to thank you, Gabriel, and thank CTV, which is hosting me on this program for the very first time. It's a new TV, I think, that all Ugandans need to pay more attention to get a variety of views that are necessary in the country. But having afforded me this opportunity, I once again, in winding up, invite all Ugandans and really encourage them that I think change is around the corner, but it will not arrive unless we all participate in making it happen. I have said that I will never stop doing what I think is my duty as a citizen, to ensure that I live in a country that is governed under the rule of law, that follows our will as people and whatever we espouse as a constitution. And therefore, for me, I will be there. I am not departing. And since those who were in my compound and I must thank all those who came to help me put the pressure. This is a demonstration that if you put pressure, what you want will happen. You know, if there was no pressure, all these people would still be here. But the pressure from all those that have applied it, whether it is the Human Rights Commission, I don't know whether they applied the pressure. As I have said, I have not heard them even condemning the thing. But if they applied the pressure, even their coming was a statement, which I told them I appreciate. All this, you know, I have had, you know, previously, and I believe now, foreigners make statements, you know, because as I have said, human rights are universal. So a Kenyan, a European, an American has a right to demand that my rights are respected. And so I thank all those that have so far put pressure to shift them from my property to the main roads. Let's shift them from the main roads to where they belong and let the country get back to us. We can do it, and we should do it. I am on tomorrow, I am on the next day until this is done. Thank you very much. And I wish you God's blessings.
The charismatic retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, we thank you for being on the Big Debate and for accepting us to do this special edition from the comfort of your home in Kasangati. And our dear viewers, thank you very much for being a part of the Big Debate. Until next week when we return for another edition, from me and the good Colonel, it's a good night. God bless you. Don't blink.